Hey, what's up, guys? What is this? Sagger anti-tank missile versus M60 main battle tank. Yom Kippur War, 1973. Wow, this is the Osprey, the dual series, right? Basically talking about the battle between Egypt, the Egyptian front against Israel, and the 1973 war, okay, which happened about 6 years after, of course, the famous the 67 war. Uh, and apparently, the Egyptians and the Syrians were equipped by their Soviet allies with a new weapon. What is this? The Soviets supplied AT-3 Sagger. Okay, of course, it has a Russian name here. Anti-tank missile. It did a real number on the IDF armor. In this case, the IDF armor, of course, is an American supplied tank here, the M60, the patent tank. Of course, the other tanks they had, the Centurions, the very versatile, excellent British tank, of course, modified, used by them and by the South Africans, really showing its value. But how is this relevant today? Yeah, well, separate from everything that's going on in the region, the whole idea of tanks, man. I'm a tank fan, but tanks, man, is it the end of the tank? Everyone always mentions. Of course, the glory war years of the tank. Of course, World War II, they caught it hard. Now they're catching it real hard with the drone weapons and everything you have. Although if you see some of the footage from Gaza, you see guys pulling off stuff that you haven't seen since, I don't know, Berlin, the Eastern Front, or El Alamein, or in the jungles of the Pacific. Okay, in terms of handheld weapons taking out armor. Tanks need armor. Tanks need infantry. Infantry need tanks. I don't see that playing out right now somewhere. But the other facet too is the battle of the economics. Okay, the battle of how the cheaply produced, effective anti-tank weapon versus the very expensive and high maintenance 4 or 5 men required crew tank. And you get to see that especially mass produced, you see that there is an inequality. Okay, it's literally David and Goliath. Okay, except who's David now? Anyway, just going over the backdrop of the war. There's the Sagger. Essentially, Soviets had, it's a wire-guided missile. It's a wire-guided anti-tank rocket stored in essentially a suitcase. Easily, one man can have 2 of these in each hand. So, and of course, the suitcase becomes one of the suitcase has become part of the launcher. But I'll show you the cool diagram of it. And they of course mention the chronology of events, design and development. Right? The whole thing of the RPG, right? But who, everything goes back to who? German technology. It actually sucked. Actually, you didn't see that video? Right. 70% of Allied tank losses were caused by Panzerfaust or Panzerschreck. So the handheld weapon using, of course, heat technology. Okay, with that second blast that shoots that jet of gas, literally boring a hole through the thickest armor and then releasing the explosion at the other end. Really effective, shape charge weapons. So they mentioned what was needed to improve the infantry anti-tank missiles: a dramatic improvement in range, but equal improvement in the means to deliver the missile accuracy. Here, the innovative German engineers hinted at the design. Of course, they created the first wire-guided missiles. Yeah. Oh, German technology actually sucked. Actually, by the way, did you know that? So, of course, getting the bugs out during the worst war in history will affect the will have an effect on your effectiveness, let's say. But obviously, after the war, the Soviets and the Americans, we're looking at all these technologies and developing them. So here, the early version, right? But this is essentially the Sagger. Okay? And here's a cool diagram. Now this is a computer. I believe this is computer art, but it's fine when you're going over something like a diagram. Let's say, not the cool painted artwork of a tank, but and you see essentially the suitcase comes apart. Right? You flip one end over. You add the rail launcher, and then you have this inside. You have the control. You have a joystick. Hey, these are going to be used for something later, right? Of course, you have these sights, like sort of a periscope, and you have to attach the wire, of course, the guided thing to the launcher. It's very interesting. Now, once launched, you could direct it in flight by observing where it was going. Of course, the M60, the patent tank. I listen. I'm very aesthetic. Okay, both the Soviet and American Cold War tanks are so ugly, and you see a lot of them now. You see them in like parks, like in Lebanon or like other places. You know, these little dying American cities. You see patent tanks. You see M48s. They look horrible. They look like shit, and they're turning into shit. So not a good time. Although the Cold War. Well, I wonder how Patton would feel that this particular country had bought many of these, but regardless. And in terms of looking at the tank, they had, I believe, a diagram of the armor. Now I'm getting autistic and nerdy. So hey, we'll go here. So the strategic situation, well, the setup to it. Obviously, you had the 6-Day War, right? 67. Israel launched one of the most audacious preemptive military land grabs in history, taking the initiative. It's funny reading that, right? It's kind of like, it would be called something else, but like land grabs. You can't hide it, can you? So, and they had done that. Of course, they weren't giving up the land they had taken, in living memory of everyone. Yeah, anyway. So, but obviously there was tension afterwards. Of course, Nasser in Egypt, and who's this Assad guy in Syria? Never heard of him. But you had the tension. But then, like, of course, you had Anwar Sadat came in after Nasser. I remember Anwar Sadat. I remember when he was assassinated. He seemed like a peaceful guy. He asked many of the Soviet advisors to leave. Obviously, the Soviets. America supported Israel, and the Soviets supported the Arab states. But what's this? We felt they had the measure of Sadat as someone who's weak, who could be contained, because he wanted peace. Crazy, right? Crazy idea. Sadat quickly became disillusioned with the lack of progress, I'm sure, amongst other things in terms of peace initiatives, right? So they decided they were gonna go the other way. Right. Let's be honest. What is this? Attrition, heavy, prolonged conflict the Israelis wish to avoid. Seems like that's what they really want to avoid all the time. Anyway, you see the gold on my ear. I remember when I was a kid, there's a TV movie, I believe, on Channel 11 in the New York area. Golda. I forgot who was in it. It was some actress of note. And all I could remember as a kid, when I saw it, I was like, who is this person? Why should I care about this person? This person's not an American. I was naive, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, the bottom line is that they described the Sagger, of course, the heat round I had mentioned, was the East German soldier, the Volks army, right? And it was cool. They already had, the Sagger was better at long range, but they had, at close range, it was not as effective. But so they had the RPG guys there to plug up the gaps in the range. And of course, the patent tank, of course, the ammunition they had. Yeah, we're just going through this, give you a little overview. It's really interesting, the armor here, how thick the armor was. And of course, the hull, the gun mantlet, and the armor on the side. I forgot my millimeters, but it's pretty relatively thick. But it did not save them from the attack. So essentially, the Egyptian army actually does an amphibious thing. I mean, you see how they were equipped. Like, cool. They had SU-100s. I loved the Soviet assault guns at the end of World War II. Even though I'm against, you know who I'm for, but man, those are Soviet assault guns were boss, man. And they set up the good Saggers. Bottom line is that when the battle happened, the Israelis were apparently, they were very overconfident. They didn't think much of their enemies. And the leader here his name is the country. He had volunteered. He was in the British Army. He had fought in North Africa and Italy during the war. So, good experience to give to his homeland, his nation. Right? But as it went, obviously, the Egyptians attacked. This time, they attacked first, and the IDF armored counterattacks were pretty much decimated pretty badly. They did. These Saggers and others, the Saggers in particular, seem to have a real effect on the tanks, man. Yeah. Well, obviously, the Israelis started to try to adapt to that, but man, and look at some of the photos here. Look at this, man. Two tanks, the T-55 and the M60, right, both knocked out, like right next to each other. So it's just interesting how the battle went. Of course, not mentioned in this book. Okay, obviously the Israelis were better trained, better equipped, but the armored counterattacks were getting wiped out. Like right here, look at this IDF armor. Well, I'm sure with the Merkava tank now, which is the best tank in the world, I'm sure that they won't have this problem anymore. And the Sagger, although when the novelty apparently wore off, they had tactics against it. Look at this cool artwork. One of the things in the Sagger's favor was that the man operating it was not, back in the day, the problem with anti-tank guns was they would go off, the enemy would see where, would pinpoint where the smoke was or where the shot came from, and they would pinpoint on it. That's why you had self-propelled guns that could scoot and shoot, move around. But the Saggers, the way they are with the wire system, the operator could be to the left, to the right, and well far away from where the thing was launched from. So that gave them some protection, let's say, at least at first. Now, obviously, in the war of attrition, the Israelis were going to have the edge, of course. Not, like I said, not mentioned in this book is the airlift that Nixon gave. The evil criminal Nixon, who had airlifted supplies into Israel, essentially helping them in their time of need while the Watergate thing was going on. So, and of course, one of the Israeli commanders afterwards saying, "Oh, no, the Sagger did not. It was not a big deal. It was not a big deal." But the analysis from the British writer, I'm assuming he's British, the analysis is a little different. They come to a little different. A quarter of these tanks were destroyed by these Saggers. Okay, once again, the dollar and cents, this cheap to make weapon. One guy can carry two of these in the desert, versus this very expensive tank. I'm sure they got a deal though on it. Call me crazy. And even to the end, they were facing threats here, even when they had a tactical advantage. Sadat to his, wanted to press on, but they got to hear it for the Egyptians. Although even to the end, they repelled several attacks by the IDF. Nice. So, and of course, the Soviets got involved. The whole thing. I think it was Brezhnev, calling Washington. There was a whole thing. And there was a ceasefire, peace in the Middle East. I think some of the attacks. Anyway, I just wanted to go over. It was very interesting. The Sagger missile. The whole idea, of course. Now this continues. Look at this photo here. You got wrecked, son. But even today, tanks are really catching it. From handheld weapons to drones to everything you can think of. And in terms of the cost to make it and the training of the people to operate it, of course, this is all theories. Demographics are going to render all that moot. But it's just interesting to see this little thing here. Right. And what is this? The Sagger that is not entirely receded for the IDF and its tank crews. The Sagger are packed and ready in its suitcase. in 2006 during operations against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. And they're still being used in Syria, so interesting. Careful. It's funny too. This blast armor. I haven't looked into this enough. Wasn't this blast armor supposed to be like the secret antidote to anti-tank weapons? They don't seem to work anywhere where they're being used. Ukraine or what have you. I think somebody made a scam on somebody, but I could be wrong. So anyway.